Good morning. This is Entropy here. Today I'd like to talk about this lie that even has no real biblical foundation at all. Talk about something called the rapture. And let me get into a bit of my personal history so that you know that I'm not just coming at this with no research involved. I first read the book of Revelation when I was 11 years old. It was the first book that I read out of the Bible. At the age of 13, I started reading books about the book of Revelation. For many years, many years, I have been reading about this. There was never a time where I believed in this concept of the rapture. I do and did, however, believe that there was going to be a series of cataclysmic events towards the end of this present age. Christians believe that somehow, because they believe in something, not because they've done anything, for God knows that Christians don't actually do anything, but since they believe in Jesus Christ, and since they believe that they deserve it, they believe that they are going to somehow, one way or another, be transported off of this earth before the hell breaks loose. You're living in a fantasy land. I've known you were living in a fantasy land from the age of 11. I'm going to be 46 next month. So I'm not just speaking out of my butt here. I know what I'm talking about. And I don't have to cite any other Bible verse except for this one. Romans 3:10. As it is written, there is none righteous. No, not one. None of you deserve anything. Christians, more than any other kind of people, are the most horrible pieces of shit on this planet. And not only are you going to go through this hell, you deserve it. But let's go back and look at where this fantasy land rapture comes from. Very simple Google search can give you this. In 1590, Francisco Ribera, a Catholic Jesuit, taught futurism, the idea that most of Revelation was about the future, and therefore not about the Catholic Church. He also taught that the rapture would happen 45 days before the end of the 3.5-year tribulation. Now let's understand that at this point, the Bible that we know today, the canon, was not the same Bible that Francisco Ribera would have been speaking about. In 1590, the book of Revelation was still part of the Apocrypha. Now, the Apocrypha was in the Bible, but it wasn't considered canon. Not until sometime in the 19th century was the book of Revelation considered canon. Like I say, these things are very easy for you to find out, and the fact that you Christians don't know this is your fault. And the only real evil in this world is ignorance, and you people are ignorant as hell. So in 1590, Francisco Ribera is saying that the rapture is going to happen at the midway point of this 7 years of tribulation. Going on, the concept of the rapture in connection with premillennialism was expressed by the 17th century American Puritans in Crease and Cotton Mather. They held to the idea that believers would be caught up in the air, followed by judgments on earth, and then the millennium. Other 17th century expressions of the rapture are found in the works of Robert Madden, Nathaniel Holmes, John Brown, Thomas Vincent, Henry Davers, and William Sherwin. The term rapture was used by Philip Doddridge and John Gill in their New Testament commentaries with the idea that believers would be caught up prior to judgment on earth and Jesus' second coming. Fantasy land. If you think that you're going to be somehow swept up in the sky, one way or another, you are a fool and an idiot. I can't think of any one group of people who deserve to go through the hell that's coming on this planet more than you Christians. Okay, continuing. There exist at least one 18th century and two 19th century pre-tribulation references in an essay published in 1788 in Philadelphia by the Baptist Morgan Edwards, which articulated the concept of pre-tribulation rapture. In the writings of the Catholic priest Nathaniel Lucazat in 1812 and John Nelson Darby in 1827, Manuel Lucena, a Jesuit priest under the pseudonym Juan Joseph ben Ezra, wrote an apocalyptic work entitled La Vina la Mestas in Gloria y Majestad, The Coming of the Messiah in Glory and Majesty. The book appeared first in 1811, 10 years after his death. In 1827, it was translated to English by a Scottish minister, Edward Irving. You evangelical Christians who constantly speak against the Catholic Church, again, another concept that you're getting not only from the Catholics, but the Jesuit Catholics at that. Dr. Samuel Prideaux Tringelis, a prominent English theologian and biblical scholar, wrote a pamphlet in 1866 tracing the concept of the rapture through the works of John Darby back to Edward Irving. Although not using the term rapture, the idea was more fully developed by Edward Irving. In 1825, Irving directed his attention to the study of prophecy and eventually accepted the one-man Antichrist idea of James Henthorne Todd, Samuel Rafi Bitland, Robert Bellamy, and Francisco Ribera. Yet he went a step further. Irving began to teach the idea of a two-phase return of Christ, the first phase being a secret rapture prior to the rise of the Antichrist. Edward Miller describes Irving's teachings like this. There are three gatherings. First, of the first fruits of the harvest, the wise virgins who follow the Lamb whosoever he goeth. Next, the abundant harvest gathered afterwards by God. And lastly, the assembly of the wicked for punishment. Never believed in this lie. Not even when I was a Christian. The rapture is total crap. Made up. Completely made up. With no biblical foundation at all. Reading from this website here. It wasn't until the early or mid-1800s there was any significant group of believers around the world that looked for a rapture, quote unquote, of the church prior to a 7-year tribulation period. This secret rapture teaching was not taught by the early church, and was not taught by the church of the first centuries, and was not taught by the reformers. It was not taught by anyone except a couple of Roman Catholic theologians until about the year 1890. Nonsense, lies, things that you Christians just gobble up. And why is it that you Christians gobble it up? Well, let's go back to the Bible and figure that out. 2 Timothy 4:3. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears. Every single one of the people that I see today are not preaching anything except a bunch of bullshit for you Christians to just hug yourself and say, oh, I'm so great, it's so wonderful, Jesus is coming for me. No, he's not. If there was a rapture, not a single one of you Christians would go. So why don't you open your eyes, start doing something that deserves something, like doing what you're supposed to be doing as Christians, like selfless works, instead of sitting around patting yourself on the back and talking about how great you are and how wonderful you are, because you're going to be raptured up in one way or another off of this planet because you believe in something. And let's get this straight for anyone out there listening. I have been watching the news and been interested in world events since before I was a teenager. I have been paying attention to this for many years. Years before many of you were even born. Certainly years before many of you even had any kind of concept of this. This age is ending. And this age is going to end with a lot of pain and sorrow and suffering, especially for those who have never really experienced it before. Especially for those who have been so selfish and self-absorbed. Get ready for the hell you so richly deserve, Christians, because it's right on your doorstep. With that, you have a wonderful Wednesday, and this is Entropy 666 signing off.